Think about it for a moment. Organized crime doesn't only operate in dark alleys or underground hideouts. Sometimes it sits at the same table in luxury restaurants, in the grand lobbies of five-star hotels, or on the top floors of skyscrapers with panoramic city views, sharing meals with holding company owners, CEOs, politicians, and bankers, making deals, financing companies, and shaping markets. This isn't just a horror movie script. For much of modern Japan, this was reality. Its name was the Yakuza. The image we see in movies of tattooed gangsters with missing fingers, scarred faces, and menacing stares through cigarette smoke certainly exists. But the real story is far more fascinating. The Yakuza weren't just a criminal organization. They were also players in a serious financial system, entrepreneurs who built vast corporate-like empires. They completely blurred the line between dirty money and boardroom strategy. This isn't just Japan's story. It's actually a cautionary tale for any system where crime, finance, and politics are intertwined to the point where no one can tell where one begins and the other ends. Their roots go back to the 17th century, to gamblers and street vendors living on the margins of feudal Japan. In that era, they offered protection, loans, and a kind of brotherhood to outcast communities. Over time, these small gangs grew and grew until they became a parallel economy. In the 19th century, they came to dominate everything illegal: gambling dens, loan sharking, smuggling. They weren't parasites. They were part of the system, in a distorted way. They even acted as financial intermediaries, providing credit where official banks couldn't reach and enforcing contracts by forcing corners where the law didn't function. The real turning point for the Yakuza came right after World War II. Japan lay in ruins, with millions of hungry and desperate people. Everything in the country fell into the hands of the black market: food, fuel, foreign goods. And in this chaotic marketplace, an organizer was needed who stepped in. The Yakuza, of course, through smuggling, lending money, and stitching together the shattered economy. They piled fortune upon fortune. In those years, doing business with them wasn't a luxury for many Japanese. It was a necessity for survival. They had the goods, the money, and the power to enforce deals, even if by force. They filled every void left by a weakened state. But the crucial part is this: when Japan began to recover, the Yakuza didn't disappear. On the contrary, they evolved and reinvented themselves. They started presenting themselves as legitimate businessmen. Giant syndicates like Yamaguchi-gumi and Sumiyoshi-kai, with thousands of members, built structures complete with receptionists, membership cards, and clear internal hierarchies. They opened offices across the country. They invested in construction, real estate, and entertainment. They sold services to companies, collecting debts that couldn't be recovered legally, breaking strikes, clearing land. In every area where lawyers and bureaucrats were too slow, the Yakuza delivered fast and definitive results. It was dirty, but profitable. In the 1960s and 70s, they were right at the heart of Japan's miracle economy. From nightclubs to film studios, from real estate speculation to stock manipulation, Yakuza fingerprints were everywhere. They would acquire land, intimidate tenants or rivals to leave, then sell it at exorbitant prices to other investors. They set up countless front companies to launder money, move it overseas, and build vast investment networks. The Yakuza were no longer street gangs. They had become heavyweights in the financial system. This web of relationships wasn't hidden either. It was an open secret that everyone knew but couldn't speak about. Politicians used the Yakuza to raise donations and silence rivals. Companies turned to them to remove obstacles. Even major banks knowingly or out of fear financed their projects. Why? The answer is simple. Everyone profited from it. The Yakuza provided cash flow, ended strikes by low-paid workers through threats and intimidation, and sped up slow legal processes. They operated almost as a shadow financial power behind official procedures. In the 1980s, at the peak of the bubble, their total assets were said to reach tens of billions of dollars. They had offices, magazines, and structures that even the police semi-officially recognized. While the American mafia was being hunted down, the Yakuza openly displayed their power. They were criminals, but also businessmen, financiers, and landowners. And they had cracked capitalism's greatest secret: The most profitable empires are built not by trading goods, but by controlling the flow of money. Land prices in Tokyo had soared. The ground of the imperial palace alone were worth more than all of California. Everyone believed it would rise forever. For the Yakuza, it was a golden opportunity. They quietly accumulated shares undercover, cornered executives with threats or scandals, and forced deals to their advantage. They were masters of what's called sakaya, corporate extortion, acquiring a small number of shares in giant companies, attending shareholder meetings, and extracting regular payments by threatening to reveal embarrassing information. For many of Japan's corporate giants, this became a routine expense. Banks usually turn a blind eye, sometimes for profit, sometimes out of fear, but mostly for profit. The line between white-collar finance and organized crime had almost completely vanished. As long as profits flowed, no one asked questions. Giant syndicates like Yamaguchi-gumi, with tens of thousands of members, managed billions of dollars. Their influence stretched from Hawaii to Southeast Asia. They had entered the global game. Politics was deeply involved, of course. Yakuza money financed the donation networks of the Liberal Democratic Party. In return, they received protection, contracts, and freedom. Scandals surfaced, but the system ran undisturbed for decades. Then what happens to every financial bubble happened. In 1989, the bubble burst. Trillions evaporated overnight, and the lost decades began. Yakuza investments melted like ice left in the sun, but in the crisis their roles became even more valuable. Debt collection, seizing bankrupt assets. They turned desperation into profit. In the 1990s, the government finally hardened its stance. Anti-gang laws were passed, and Yakuza membership began to decline steadily. But the Yakuza adapted again. They closed public offices, shifted to front companies and intermediaries. They became less visible but more sophisticated. They went global, Macau casinos, offshore accounts, international alliances. The irony is this: while Japan cleaned house domestically, the problem didn't disappear. It simply evolved. Cybercrime, crypto, online fraud, the methods changed, but the logic remained the same. Evil has always existed and revises itself according to the systems in place. They always find a gap and profit from it. The dual relationships continued, only now behind closed doors, invisible to everyone. Luxury restaurants gave way to back alleys again. The lesson from this story is crystal clear. As systems grow more complex, organized crime doesn't vanish. It mimics the system and embeds itself even deeper. Crime and capitalism aren't opposites. They're often twins. When the official system is slow, rigid, or restrictive, crime offers speed, liquidity, and ruthlessness. And that offer is often found irresistible. A clean economy is actually a fantasy. Every financial system has its shadows, and the biggest deals are closed in those shadows. If you think this is unique to Japan, look around a little more carefully. Money laundering, corporate extortion, political financing, land speculation. The same mechanisms operate everywhere. With the mafia in Italy, cartels in Latin America, white-collar crime in the U.S. The Yakuza just did it in an extraordinarily open and corporate way. I previously shared a video about Pablo Escobar on this topic. If you'd like to watch it, I've added it at the end of the video. Feel free to click and watch. In the end, when money and power concentrate, crime doesn't just feed off a system. It becomes part of it. The Yakuza story isn't just about exotic tattooed gangsters. It reminds us the world's most dangerous empires are built not always with guns or armies, but with balance sheets and contracts. The shadows are always there. They direct the money, rewrite the rules. The question is, can you see those shadows? If this piece gave you a new perspective, subscribe. History has the answers ready. I just show you where to look. Goodbye for now.